So, Mr. GoldenFox, tell me what's on your mind.
The comic books of My Little Pony. Not in the sense of whether they're good or not, but how they're put to use for the show. I have a rather personal issue with it conceptually.
Oh? And why is that?
It started a little after I finished reviewing Season 3. I asked about a few things in the hopes that the show would elaborate upon, such as Queen Chrysalis from A Canterlot Wedding. And then I received feedback where these kinds of questions are addressed in the comics, as if that's the only way I'm going to get answers from. This bothered me for quite a while. What also didn't help is that I briefly ranted about it on DeviantArt after reviewing an episode during Season 4. A user called me narrow-minded when I stated that I only relied on the show and not the comics or headcanons. I took quite a large offense to it. Now granted, if what I want to see in the show isn't there, it's not going to bother me that much. What is there is there. However, because there's been talk that the comics may have been canon, I had this bad feeling that the writers of the DHX staff would take advantage of the comic books to be used as a crutch. As if you have to read them in order to understand the show better, or in many cases if you find a plot hole of some kind. See, there's this phrase that I've followed for a long time ever since I've started my reviewing criteria. It's been stated from Gene Siskel as a part of the Siskel and Ebert show in the 80s and 90s that, to roughly put it, I shouldn't have to read a novel or book to understand what the movie is based on. The movie should stand on its own. I followed this line for a long time and I found it to be true. Did I have to read the Harry Potter books to understand the movies? No. Granted, not everything is explained, but sufficient enough for the narrative. Did I have to read Jurassic Park to understand the movie? No. Same thing. So in MLP's case, I shouldn't have to look at the comic books as a requirement. To be called narrow-minded is just a blunt attack to me without any proper understanding whatsoever. When I watch MLP, or anything for that matter, I expect them to be self-contained. I personally find this to be crucial on that matter because, well, let me put this in perspective. Let's say that I'm new with the show and I give it a shot. But there's a few things I'm confused about and underexplained in an episode that's not even fully explained in the show. I then start to lose interest and I tell a friend of mine who recommended it to me. His answer would be, "Oh, that's in the comics, you should read those in order to understand the show better." How would you react to that? Surely some people would have no problem, but for me, and possibly others, chances are more than likely their answer would be, "Really? I have to spend the extra time, money, and effort that the writers didn't properly explain in the show? What's in it for me? I have a job, I have school, I have kids to feed. I have better things to do on my agenda than to spend effort at the expense of what the show is lacking on." I know it's a bit over-exaggerating. I don't have kids, but the point is, that's how I would feel today if I was new to the show at this point.
I see. I suppose this must have been bothering you for quite some time, especially since you seem to have so much to say about it. Honestly though, I too have had a number of comments left on my videos where people have tried to direct my attention to the MLP comics. Most of the time it's because someone wants to hear my thoughts on character and story elements there. But occasionally I'll be asking a question to my viewers at the end of one of my videos, and there will be those who tell me that such questions are answered in the comics. Now, normally I don't mind such things, because I'm sure that people want me to enjoy reading through these side stories as much as they have. But I must admit that I do feel a bit troubled when someone says that there is no need for any kind of discussion at all in the comments section because the questions I ask in my video have already been answered in some way through these MLP comics. Now, I have not read through the majority of these comics myself just yet. I've seen little previews here and there as they are posted on Equestria Daily, and I've heard enough about them through my watchers to get some basic ideas on the kind of stories and character arcs that exist there. I can't say for certain whether the comic book writers match the skill of the show writers, at least not until I take a thorough look through them myself. However, while I can agree that people shouldn't try to derail a discussion because a specific answer lies somewhere outside the show, I hope that you can come to understand, just as I have, GoldenFox, that the majority of people who leave those comments simply want us to partake in the same joys they have experienced in these new stories. For many of the same reasons that our watchers tell us to read certain fan fictions that stand above the others. With that said, I suppose I am a bit concerned about those who take the canon of the comics as being the absolute truth when it comes to the show as well. I have created many videos talking about possibilities for characters that are only briefly mentioned but never shown in the series, the prime example being Starswirl the Bearded. I love having conversations with my watchers about how he might be introduced to the show someday, and what kind of stories would unfold if he did. But then there is the inevitable comment from someone who tries to tell everyone exactly how he is in the comics, and that's exactly how he'll be in the show as well. I'm sure that person means well, but I can't help but feel as though they are missing the point on why I brought the topic up in the first place. Then again, that begs the question. Would the fans become upset if a character like Starswirl the Bearded did appear in the show someday, and he turned out to be written differently than how he's been portrayed in the comics?
There actually is a similar role on that matter, Princess Luna. When the show was new at the time, we were anticipating to her first episode, Luna Eclipse. People were very excited about it. We wanted to see her ever since her first appearance in the pilot episodes in Season 1. However, there was a lot of debate on the character in that not all of us will perceive her the same way as we originally thought. Kind of like Starswirl, as you mentioned. This is also diving into some headcanon territory, though. That's also one of the many resources I don't follow, because if the show proves that headcanon wrong, well, what would you think otherwise? It's a bit off topic on this matter, but I can understand how one would react if something was explained in the show that a lot of us wanted to see. Personally, what's presented to me in the show isn't always what I expect, but that doesn't bother me. I'm just glad that it's explained.
I suppose this is going back to fans who fall in love with a concept that a fanfiction writer has presented, and then getting upset when that concept is made obsolete by the show writers. I don't know whether any of the story concepts of the comics will ever be adopted by the show's canon, but I for one will keep putting my trust in the MLP staff who have managed to entertain us far more than any other source for these characters thus far. I hope that our community will continue to enjoy other forms of MLP media like the comics for many years to come, and someday I will likely join in on the fun. But at the same time, I hope that we can come to a better understanding that the show writers have the freedom to write however they choose for very good reason. That's what they've been hired to do. Whether the show will eventually include elements from the comics or not remains to be seen. So let's just enjoy what we have thus far and try not to get too upset if the show happens to change what we've accepted as canon.
Of course. And I should also elaborate upon something further. I know that the show isn't going to explain everything. It's not possible. Many viewers perceive the show in so many different angles, which are the reason why headcanons and fanfictions exist in the first place. It's because certain questions are asked in which the writers didn't think too much about, and that's perfectly natural. As it is with the comics, there's going to be expanded universes of any franchise through outside resources, and there's nothing wrong with that. So don't get me wrong if I'm criticizing the general concept. I know how exciting it is for viewers to participate in the comics and possibly novels, provided there are some other things in life that they're a fan of that the show can connect with. In fact, a good number of franchises managed to do it right. Star Wars, for instance, was a perfect example of providing external resources to expand the universes from graphic novels to books and video games. Titles like Rogue Planet, Knights of the Old Republic, or Shadows of the Empire. They aren't really a necessity to acquire if one's to understand the original classic trilogy. It's more optional. If the MLP comics are used in that particular fashion, that's fine. I just don't want it to be put to use where you're forced to read them.
I can understand that. It is often fun to find even more content of anything you're already a fan of. I'm glad we had this conversation, GoldenFox. Shall we continue on this next week?
Sure thing, Doc. I look forward to it. I might look into these comics sooner or later, but I'm still thinking about it.
As shall I. Take care, Mr. GoldenFox. It's good to be helping.